This is a war, and this is your fate. We are the face of your new police state. We are the law, and we've got the guns. Statutory power, mandatory minimums. We are the SWAT. We're here for your part and all the cash that you got. We are adrenaline junkies taking orders from the czar. It's a no-knock raid. Don't be afraid. Paramilitary police stand on parade.
You are not alone.
Welcome to the Charles Carroll Society. I'm your host, Alex Barron. We have a great show for you today. I think let's get right into it. American Readout Coffee. Anybody who drinks coffee or tea, please take a look at the American Readout Coffee. It's one of the few affiliates that are building and working in this area. So if you guys are coffee, I'd appreciate it if you buy it from a link from the site. If you're thinking about moving here, we have a wonderful real estate agent, Mary Joy. Her number is right on the site. So I found her to be a good person. She actually found my house for me. So I absolutely know that she's a good person and she can work there. And so we have a guy, a group of Amish have moved into our neighborhood, a new group of Amish. And the way they make their money and kind of growing there is they make these very, very, very nice play sets. You'll see that ad also on the site. So if anybody's interested in moving here, and one of the things I did is I got my kids a play set so that they can spend more time outside. And so that advertiser has chosen to support the site too. So if you can support the people who are helping me bring this message to you, that would be really appreciated by them and strengthen the readout and just help us all together. And when you call them, let them know that you're a friend of Alex Barron and where you heard from, or where you found them. And so that way they can continue to support us and help us grow larger. We have we have a show that I've been working on, for a while. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some things, and then we're going to spend the majority of the time, talking on this show today about the Bunkerville incident and the Bundy family and the trial that just wrapped up. Because I think it's very important, and there's some things that I've been really wanting to go over, but I've not chosen to go over them, and I'll explain why in a while. I haven't been on the mic in a long time, so for those out there who actually care and look at alternative media and want to see people with different perspectives, thank you very much. It's actually nerve-wracking. I mean, I do public speaking all the time, but it's nerve-wracking to get on the mic. It's nerve-wracking to write up a script. It's nerve-wracking to kind of put your thoughts in order. It is. And I'm kind of the opposite. You know, I'm the kind of guy who, when I do public speaking, I love the feedback and I love to see the faces, and it's just it's an interesting thing. And it's a little bit depressing. The audience has grown so much. I think we're close to, what do we have on our site so far? We have over 700,000 unique visitors on the site. That's a lot of people who've come and read the content that I have been producing over the number of years. It's really good. And I continue to want that to grow. I really appreciate the people who share and like and comment on the site. We have a good group of fairly regular people who comment. And, you know, it's kind of weird, to tell you honest truth. I think I'll do this next week, or the next time I get on the mic. I want to talk a little bit about, you know, how it started and where the difficulties are and why I haven't been on the mic more often. But I think I'll save that for another show. On this show, I think we need to focus and keep to the script, right? So, I first want to thank everyone for your notes of concern, for your, on the issue that I share with my family. And in this audience, although unfortunately liberals have found our podcast and have found our site and they monitor it now and stuff. So it seemed when we were smaller and there were fewer people who even knew we existed, it's almost we can speak, I don't know, more openly, even though I guess you can't. Literally I had someone email me and said, can you please provide me all of the radio shows that you've ever done in your whole life? I'm like, all of them? I'm like, who else would want that except, federal agents or some kind of person trying to chop you up? I'm like, they're kind of out there. I've deleted a bunch, but I mean, whatever. So quite amazing. It's quite amazing. So now that you're you always have to be a little bit, this is the soft tyranny that we speak of, now that now that the powers that be or kind of know who you are and are monitoring you, you have to be a little bit more cautious and you feel that you have to be more cautious. You really don't. I try to, I speak honestly, but it's an evil thing that sits above us where, where you feel that you have to be, aware. And I think that's bad. It's not good. So, but, it is what it is. So anyway, that's one of the reasons why I put the information out there about we're having some family issues. I don't know how it'll turn out. We're trying, we're doing our thing. It's not like it's a new thing or anything like that. But I put that out there because, I feel that this community that we're building, the audience that we have, I just, like, they're like, whoa, normally I put a lot of stuff out across Christmas. I put a huge amount of stuff out and so I just wanted to let people know why. To tell you the truth, basically we got called to do a major surgery during Thanksgiving. I spent Thanksgiving alone, or actually with my wife in a hotel, recovering from massive surgery. I shared some of the sites there when we went out to Seattle. It was quite amazing. So, and that's part of it, right? When people go through life, huge events, the loss of this or the loss of that or the loss of a child, you won't believe this. It's a shame. It's a shameful statistics, but a massive loss in any marriage, it's like a massive, a significant percentage of those marriages fail. You would think that if you're going through some horrid thing, that would drive you together. It would push you together. But it seems like when there's catastrophe, things fail. It's pretty terrible for me. But anyway, I just, want to let people know, thank you very much for reaching out. Thank you very much, for, your prayers, which sometimes I feel I'm moving through the day and it's whatever is happening. And it's almost like you can feel a calming thing. So I truly believe that. So it's a really good thing. So thank you very much. And I just wanted, like I said, I felt that I owed people an explanation of why I haven't been on the mic, why I haven't been there. It's a huge, you just put a lot of energy into something else when you're trying to deal with other stuff. The kids appear to be okay. They appear to be doing well. And that's good. Like I said, I think I'll do another show and focus. I will. It's going to be a little rant show, unfortunately. And it'll talk about, where we are, what we're doing, the motivation and where we're at. So I think I'll save that up for another show. Since the last time I've been on the radio show, we've had interviews with BuzzFeeds that actually didn't go so badly. There was a big progressive woman. She doesn't know how much, we looked into her. I mean, we're not magic. Things are online. We're not trying to, no one has their own personal CIA, although we wish we did, but, we But she seemed to be a person who tried to tell a story straight. So, we control that, but we did that. The Sandpoint Reader did a whole, series of articles on the American Readout. They tried to get James Rawls to interview him, and he just refused. He said, go ahead if you want to interview Alex or John Jacob Smith, that's your business. He didn't say that, but basically these are the people who are there. I think they did a fairly decent job. I mean, in a couple of the articles, they just had to let their liberal bias show, which is fine. But I would say the majority of the article, they apparently just, they just reported the news. And when they wanted to interview me, my criterion is that I would respond to them in writing, and they had to print everything I said, and they did. So, hopefully more people out there in the world will see that. More people will see the truth. I mean, I just spoke the truth. I really did. When we talked to those guys, I mean, I let them know specifically that we're not, the American Readout is not a religious movement, but it's a movement made up by primarily religious people. And we truly defend and promote, not just defend, because anybody who's always in defense loses. If I'm always attacking, you lose. If you're always in defense, you're going to lose that battle. So you have to promote. You have to be on offense. You have to be pushing. And we push Orthodox Christianity. We push classic Western civilization. We push individual liberty, period. And so, I think people are a little bit shocked, of course, whenever they see me. They're always surprised. It's kind of funny, a huge amount of people. It's always there, but that's fair. I don't care. But I think the message got there, and that's fine. Also, the local paper interviewed me. And so we've had some good interviews. That's The Economist, BuzzFeed. I mean, those are some major papers that we've spoken to. And if you read the articles, I've did my absolute best to represent the American Readout, Patriots, the Tea Party, not really the Tea Party, but Patriots, and our movement of this political migration movement we got going on here in the best light possible. So I think we did a pretty good job. And so, I just wanted to go with that. So I want to talk, like I said, I'm going to probably, like I said, change the format about this a little bit. I'm trying to, look at different things and see how we can get this all, working. But I'll try to figure out how to do different things. But, this show, and I'm not going to break for a whole bunch of things. I just want to, like I said, I just wanted to provide some information for people maybe the information is not all out there and want to get it out there. It's late. We've worked our primary job. We've done some ranch work. We've helped the kids with their homework. It's really hard. It's kind of funny trying to do French homework with your high school student and doing, going over the Greek. You're like, what? How can you? You're like, ugh. And of course, their math is of a level that, you've got to remember what the heck you were doing in high school. So we got all that done, and it's later at night. So this is the time I talk. And I'll go over this again in another, but I'll tell you, when we started this podcast, there were 10 people who were listening, 10 people who were coming to the website. And now we have over 700,000 unique visitors it was like a voice in the wilderness. It was just like this. It was in the middle of the night, and it was just like, something's going way wrong in the country, and we really need to, and I didn't know if there was anybody else out there who actually realized that we need to make a change, whether something horrible happens or not. We need to figure out what we're doing here. And so this is the first time I've done the show in a while that I actually feel like it was the first time. It was just like me and sitting in the middle of nowhere, and everyone was asleep, and you're alone. You feel alone. That's why I snatched that audio from the Man of Steel, and of course they can come by and tell me to stop using it because their stuff, but it's only like 15 seconds or whatever. But you're not alone. That really means a lot to me. For me to tell you and for me to tell me, we're not alone. And you know what? There's Black Lives Matter running around there trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do. They see the whole world through race. And I'm sorry to say that there's white nationalists who believe the answer is race. They're race realism, which is there is race, which I guess that's a race realism. But I don't simply believe that the idea is that the solution is a racial ethno state. Although mass migration is very bad, I don't believe in that. But it just seems like there's all these people on either side, right? And here you and I are in the middle going, I really don't care who you are. I don't want to know about your life. If I don't like the way you're living, you don't get invited to Thanksgiving dinner. But other than that, I need to defend your constitutional rights just like anybody else. And yes, we oppose mass immigration because, well, this is our nation. We're kind of full. 330 years. They need to take that thing down off the Statue of Liberty. That was put up when we were empty. Now we're full. Thank you very much. Especially since everybody likes to live in the same city. So, yeah, it feels like it's supposed to be. Just sitting out in the middle of nowhere and here. But, and now that I'm deep in the readout, there's a lot of friends, a lot of things going on, and that's fun. I mean, a lot of stuff going on. So it's kind of cool. That's pretty cool. So what do I want to talk about tonight? I want to talk about the events at Bunkerville. The events of Bunkerville for me have been one of the greatest successes that the patriot movement, the militia movement, the entire movement of people who, and I define patriots as Christian, Orthodox Christian, generally conservative, but generally libertarian, and neo-anti-federalists. That's why we have so many problems with the federal government and a lot less with the local sheriff. I mean, we believe in the local sheriff, but the faraway federal governments are literally acting like redcoats of yesteryear. They come through. They think they have supremacy. They act like they literally come to a small town and they act like an invading army. Bunkerville was one of the greatest successes, and specifically what I'm talking about is not only did the federal government and people in power who knew what was going on decided not to have a bloodbath. And I think a lot of people on both sides didn't want to have a bloodbath, but I truly believe that people on both sides were willing to have a bloodbath. And that was a good thing. As you know, if you go through, different things, I go through the shooting course with, I forget what the revolutionary guys. I've talked about it before. But the shooting course with those guys, they make you sit through and well, not make you, well, like they do make you, but it's kind of cool to sit through and talk about, how the Revolutionary War started. And these guys, they always tell you that there's 3 strikes of a match to start at the American Revolution. Bunkerville was 1 strike, maybe the second, but it was definitely the first. It definitely one of the strikes. And the first strike that started this first thing was like the Boston Massacre, which Bunkerville could have became. I can't, if Ruby Ridge caused, people claim that that's one of the reasons why Timothy McVeigh went and killed 170 or 180 people and blew up a federal building. Can you imagine that's terrible, and that's domestic terrorism, and again, violence never has solved any problem in the world. Violence has never caused any evil person to leave you alone. But Timothy McVeigh did do some evil stuff. There were kids in that building, for goodness sake. And it was just It's just really bad stuff. But, but there was a reaction, that's what Ron Paul was always good about. He's like, these people's anger and viciousness and just terribleness doesn't just show up from nowhere. That isn't just bing. It's, oh my goodness, it's just sitting there. People just are pissed. That's not true. Okay? That's not true. What really happens is people get upset. And then there's a reason. But, so, Randy Weaver and Ruby Ridge, whatever happened, and then people were blowing up federal buildings. What would have happened even if the federal agents had succeeded? And then they had shot and killed a lot of cowboys in Bunkerville, Nevada. I mean, somebody figured that out and said, we don't want to do that. But that's how it works, right? 3 strikes to the matches. They avoided that. That was great news. Avoiding violence was great. If you can, always. Because really people want to just be left alone. I think that's why I did the interview with BuzzFeed and that woman, is because it's like BuzzFeed literally after Trump won decided to put a person in the Midwest. I mean, BuzzFeed's a progressive globalist paper. That's why we didn't go really talk to her face to face too much. But here she comes again, and she's like, she comes out and says, they literally put her out here. I mean, and she walks around. She's allegedly, she's older, so she's, not my style. She's whatever, but she's, she keeps herself together. And of course she's blonde haired, blue eyed, runs around here, and the cowboys all just like to talk to him because cowboys are soft for that. But that's what they found. It's like they found the Midwest. Sometimes these people actually do seem to be like, we're like some kind of native tribe to them. That's how different we are. Bunkerville was a great win, a great success on the ground. All the patriots that showed up. And we didn't, there was a different level of communication, between Bunkerville and the Oregon, occupation. There was. And so, but what just happened a week ago, I believe, maybe 2 weeks, was there was a huge success in court. In the wildlife occupation that happened in Oregon, that jury, 12 American citizens said, and generally a fairly urban jury, they try to pull from different people because they figured, hey, if we get a more urban group of people, we can get a conviction for these crazy white cowboys. But they don't realize the only people who believe the government are old white Republicans. I mean, no one else believes the government. And there's a lot of old white Republicans who don't believe the government anymore either. That's the truth. Okay? I mean, that's just the truth. And you put that in front of they think they can drop that in front of a urban audience and go, look at those scary white people. And people be like, well, you're the government, so you gotta prove it, I know, beyond a reasonable doubt. You gotta prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And they don't, it is what it is, right? So the court case, winning on the ground, and then the court case was just dismissed by an anti-constitutional, Obama-appointed, Hispanic, female, feminist judge. I mean, this woman hated. She did everything she could to help the government. And even she was forced to say the government exceeded all measure in their persecution of patriots. Generally white patriots. Well, at least the Bundy family, they went after everybody. But it's generally white men, white patriots. That's true. I usually don't talk about race, but it was a true statement. But this Hispanic judge was forced to admit that the federal government, full of white men, had chased these guys down and just done, the government had withheld over 1,000 pages of evidence that could have proven these men's innocence. The Bundys had absolutely sworn on the Bible, and for a Christian, that's a big thing, for a believing Christian, that there were snipers around their house. FBI said, not only were there not snipers around the house, that it was ridiculous for them to even think that. And now that's what started the whole thing, was these guys said, hey, they came after our cattle, and the next thing we know is they dropped surveillance cameras all around our house and are surrounding our house with sniper rifles. And a lot of patriots decided that, you know what, the Weaver thing and the Waco thing is not going to happen again on our watch. And it's an unbelievable thing, an unbelievable win. The Patriots said, no. These guys said, you're not going to stand alone. It is the greatest. You don't even hear this. It is like the greatest win that has been there. I mean, it's amazing. Now, we're going to talk about it. Okay? We're going to talk about that in detail. One of the greatest wins on the battlefield, and it's a great win because the tactical situation was resolved in your favor, in our favor, and no blood was spilled. That's perfect. And then to win in court. In the Oregon, they won. They won. And 12 people said not guilty. And then they tried people once or twice in Nevada, the Bundys, and they were not convicted both times. And the last time, the Hispanic, Obama appointed judge who's friends with Harry Reid had to declare a mistrial with prejudice, so the government doesn't have the ability to try those charges again. You think the ATF or the FBI or the BLM are going to let that sit? No. They are all out there trying to get some people to say some stupid stuff on mic, which we're going to talk about. But it's a huge win. You won on the battlefield, and then you won in court. I shall take part in the Native, not the Native Americans, but what I call the first immigrants here in the United States. They all the native. They didn't pop out of the ground. God did not create them here. They're just simply the first immigrants, called tobacco. The person who, one of the people, in my opinion, who needs a massive thank you is Sherry over at Readout News and her husband. The Readout News and Sherry have done such an incredible job covering the Bunkerville trial, the Oregon trial. If journalism wasn't so slanted and owned by globalist progressives who hate Americans, hate individualism, hate Christianity, hate Western civilization, she'd get one of those fancy awards that they give out for journalism, the Pulitzer or whatever. She would. The story, she was saying for years that there's something seriously wrong with this trial, and any reasonable person, she had it all. I mean, she's published. She could write a book, literally called The Bunkerville Trial. I mean, just from her blog posts, it is that clear that the Readout News really did a bang up job for the whole community. And if you listen to this, go over there and say thank you from the CCS community. She's done a great job. We've got to support alternative media. Now, I guess I'll write up a post or something or whatever I can do to figure out how I'm going to stay in business here too. You got to make enough money. If you're going to be doing this where we're putting out alternative media, which the state hates, you got to make enough money to hire the lawyers that you're going to need in the future. That's just simply the truth. So I have to figure out how to do that. Maybe start a Patreon account and get some more advertisers, but visit the advertisers, buy some coffee, buy some tea, get this stuff done. So Bunkerville was one of the greatest wins in recent history, and it's after a string of losses. Tell me where the federal government has just butchered Americans. And most of you can start talking to me immediately, but none of you, not in the sound of my voice, will hear about Move in Philadelphia. You guys don't know about Move in Philadelphia. That, to me, was one of the first times the government used military weapons, military tactics against American citizens who they didn't like and butchered them. Move in Philadelphia, a black liberation group founded by some guy named John Africa. He was born Vincent Lephart. He was born Vincent Lephart. They had this weird group. Yes, it was, black separatists. Hey, Randy Weaver, used to hang out with white separatists or white supremacists. That's not the issue. And these guys, they rented a whole bunch of houses or bought a bunch of houses, and they lived in this row house, and, they set outside with their bullhorns, screaming at people about, the end's coming, revolution, whatever. And they were out there just, peacefully screaming in their bullhorns, but their neighbors were like, hey, these people are crazy. And they pissed off the police, and the police were going to show them what for. And what the police did in 1972, the police tried to serve a warrant on those guys. They came in to shoot those guys. They said they're not going out peacefully. They got into a gunfight with the police. The police surrounded the place, and then the police firebombed the building. They dropped explosives, essentially C4, mixed C4 down on their row houses, and it ignited some generators that these people had on their roof, and it ended up burning and destroying 85 houses because the police were going to show this black community. The rest of the people who were just living next to them, they had nothing to do with anything, but the police were going to show these people one thing or another. So they told the fire chief to stand down there, and their excuse was, well, we thought they were going to shoot the fire people, even though they didn't. We thought they were going to shoot the fire guys. This is after, 85 houses were burned to the ground. And then they denied for a long time that they had firebombed their house. And one of the people who were there reported that at the end, when all the houses were on fire, the men and women were going to go down with the ship, and they sent their children out, to escape this building. And you know what happened? The police mowed down those little black children running from that burning place. Yeah. How do you not know that? I know that. It's called MOVE, M-O-V-E, in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia firebombing. The government hired their own, they got a commission to investigate it after, everybody's murdered and dead. I forget, 10, 20 adults died, several kids died. I can't remember the exact number, but several adults died, several kids died. The commission said that the government was at fault, and one of the lines struck me. It said, the commission said dropping a bomb on an occupied row house was unconscionable. Not one police officer, not one government official was ever charged, went to trial, nothing. That was the first one, 1972. Then we know what happened in Ruby Ridge, Idaho, here in Idaho with Randy Weaver, right? 1992. So 20 years later. No one was tried. I'm not sure anybody went to jail about shooting Randy. And you can talk about move.org as, or Move in Philadelphia, or Black Liberation, Black Nationalists, and that's what they'll say. Because, where my voice is at, my voice is always about showing that we all are in this together. We all we all have the right to exist, and there are better ways to deal with American citizens who have not done anything, especially American citizens who have not done anything violent. Even American citizens who probably have done things violent when there's children involved, than firebombing their house if you're the federal government in this nation. Yet that's what they did in Philadelphia in 1972. There's easier ways to grab Randy Weaver. And so if Randy Weaver comes up, you just hear black people and everybody else go, oh, he's a white supremacist. Well, he wasn't a white supremacist. Yes, he hung out with white separatists. Yes, he sold, he tried to make money by selling guns or gunsmithing to anyone who would do it. And some of them were things, even if he was a white supremacist, it doesn't matter. You don't have the right to roll up on somebody's house and shoot his wife in the face when she's standing in the kitchen with a toddler in her arms. You don't have a right to roll up on someone's house and mow down their 14-year-old kid. So, in other words, they'll tell you, move. That's how you can decide, right? They'll tell you, move in Philadelphia. White people, you have to hate that and not talk about that. Because, they're a black liberation group. Whatever. They're a black nationalist base. And then they'll tell the black people and all the other people of color that, hey, Ruby Ridge, that was a white supremacist. It doesn't matter what we did. Well, yeah, it does. You don't have a right to firebomb an occupied house in Philadelphia in 1972. You don't have the right to shoot women in the face when they're standing in their kitchen because some guy sold a guy a sawed-off shotgun. And then, of course, we know what happened in Waco, Texas with the Branch Davidians in 1993. So it's like the media out there, the news out there doesn't understand that most people at least know about Ruby Ridge and Waco, Texas, Randy Weaver and the Branch Davidians. And only your loyal bard who's out there always reading can talk to you about, move in Philadelphia in 1972. And if people know about these things and they see video of the FBI surrounding people's houses in 2014 with guns, they're not going to, it was amazing. It was a great reaction. But even all that, that's history. And everybody should know that. It's the history. But don't just talk about Ruby Ridge and Waco and Bunkerville. Start with move in Philadelphia. That way, what's move? Well, that's the police law enforcement not all law enforcement. That's one of the things you have to learn as you grow older. You realize that law enforcement does have a required job. We all need to call 911. They have a job that we need them to do. It's a dangerous job. The vast majority of law enforcement officers are good people. But unfortunately, there's a question whether the good law enforcement officers protect the public from bad law enforcement officers. There is a question. I think that's a fair question. But it's their job is hard. So we're not anti-police. It's a job that needs to be done, and there's a lot of good guys doing it. But there are excesses, and move in the firebombing in Philadelphia is one. The murdering of that woman at Ruby Ridge is another. The burning of all those children alive in Waco, Texas is yet another. And what almost happened in Bunkerville was there. You literally going to use a paramilitary force to deal with somebody with their cows? What are you kidding me? Really? But somebody said that was a good idea. But that's not the thing that I want to talk about either, like I said. Here's what I want to talk about, and I think it's something that should stay with all patriots, period. These words. Longbow Productions. Longbow Productions. If you don't know what Longbow Productions is, then we should know. And that's why we're here. Longbow Productions was a documentary journalist company that basically gathered all the data required to jam the Bundys. That's how they almost went to jail for a very long time. Longbow Productions. A journalist company came in with cameras, came in with drones, took pictures of the whole thing, watched everyone who was there. Once they started interviewing the Bundys, a lot of other people let them interview them and ran off at the mouth. Longbow Productions. What was Longbow Productions? Longbow Productions was the FBI pretending to be journalists. That's what it was. And that is the point of this podcast. That's why I made this podcast. Patriots, almost everyone has to learn from this era. You know, we do after action reports. And the biggest after action report for the Bundy issue was Longbow Productions, in my opinion. And the reason is almost every time you get into a problem, you end up finding out that you failed in multiple ways. And I assumed that Cliven Bundy and his sons would admit that they failed with Longbow Productions. Everything that we read is Ammon Bundy, Ammon, knew the Holy Spirit was trying to talk to Ammon Bundy, and he kind of knew there was something wrong with Longbow Productions. These guys had a website that existed less than a year. They had an address of a company in the middle of nowhere that no one's ever heard about. They never had produced any other documentary. No one knew them in the Patriot community. Yet the Bundys agreed to be interviewed by these guys. And they did it kind of, they're like, well, we don't know who you are. We're not sure who you are. And in other words, the Holy Spirit was talking to them, but they didn't listen. And these people were all FBI. They were not even confidential informants. They were 100% full up FBI undercover agents who faked being a news source, a news outlet, and wanted to get the word out. And all they did was put a camera in your face and ask you questions that would be useful in trial. And again, almost everything I read, that the Bundys knew that there's a problem. And what's a shame is that it's not even the first time the FBI has faked being a news organization. Back in 2007, there's a kid who emailed bomb threats to a school. The FBI couldn't figure out who it was, in Seattle, by the way. So what the FBI did, because he was using Tor. He was using Tor, which I encourage all of you guys to do, the Onion router browser, and they couldn't find out where his computer was because he had emailed his stuff through them, and he was using a remailer, one of the email sites to do remailing. So what the FBI agents did is pose as Associate Press journalists and email the student a whole bunch of links to articles, and those links installed stuff on his computer so that they could find out who the heck was there. And the Justice Department said, hey, yep, proper, it's all good, appropriate, and whatever. But they did say that, hey, if we're going to impersonate journalists, then, you know, in the future, perhaps it has to go up higher in the FBI before it gets approved. And the FBI nor the Bureau of Land Management has said that when they impersonated Longbow Productions to try to, well, they did snatch the Bundys by getting them on camera and asking them stupid questions like, well, were you planning on killing people? Were you trying to kill people? Were you looking to kill people? Who did you have in your sights? What kind of guns did you have? What kind of ammo did you have? How much ammo did you have? Did you call these? I mean, it's just like all these questions are like, these are not questions a Patriot media would do. And that's my point. My point is, if already the study for the story of Bunkerville and the Bundys was completely out there. It was all on YouTube. It was all on Twitter. I mean, it's everywhere. Yet we still sometimes look at this very large media, and we've got to be very cautious about these people. And like I said, the Bundys later on talked about like they had a bad feeling about this. They didn't think this was the right thing to do. They were there, they were very cautious. They said that all these, their suspicion was aroused. Yet they still did the interviews. And that's the after action report. Some stuff that people need to learn. One is that the FBI will do that. And then, listen to your gut. And basically, you can get your story out nowadays without having to talk to very large media. I mean, it just has power to do that. Social media, even though they're trying to crack down in every way they can, the internet basically is designed to allow people to communicate. In you can get your story out safely that way. But I wanted to go over a couple things about Longbow Productions. There's a guy who was started hanging out with the Bundys. His name was Brian Cavalier. Cavalier. He was a heavily tattooed supporter from Arizona for the Bundys. And he was hanging out on their ranch all the time. And he was kind of like their bodyguard, or allegedly, during the events of Bunkerville and after. He told these people he was a veteran. Now, it's not hard to be a veteran. For goodness sakes, I'm a Navy veteran. While I was in the military, I never saw any type of combat up close. It was after I was in the military as a defense contractor. I was over there and, rockets were launched, but I still wasn't shooting back. I was just dodging missiles and mortars and rockets for a while. So it's not hard to become a veteran, but this guy claimed to be a veteran. He wasn't. Well, what we can say is this guy was in charge of security. He was supposed to meet people at the gate. He met the FBI crew at the gate. And then what he said to the FBI crew was, "You're not authorized to be here." This is after they were trying to sneak their way in. And they were sneaking their way in. And they met this guy and the guy says, "You're not really authorized to be here. You're not officially on this list, but I'm going to let you go in anyway." Literally. And then as soon as he came in, the FBI just started walking around. All he wanted to do was talk about, his deployments to Iraq, his deployment to Afghanistan, and that he was and this guy was a massively overweight guy, that he was or overweight guy. I guess we're all overweight, but whatever. I guess that doesn't matter. But he was an overweight guy. And generally, Marines try to keep themselves in some shape unless they're busted up. He said he was a Marine scout sniper. A Marine scout sniper? Those guys are like the marksman's marksman. I mean, these guys are, good Lord. These are some serious, these guys can hit. Okay. This guy came through and Brian Cavalier, he was the first weakness, is that the Bundys hung out with Brian, and this guy claimed to be a veteran and he wasn't. The FBI allegedly asked him, "Did you kill anybody?" Well, first of all, any veteran that has been in direct combat or even been around people they don't want to talk about this. His answer, "Yeah, I was a United States Marine Corps scout sniper." And what the Marines have said is the Marine Corps have no record of Cavalier ever serving in the Marines. So the guy he never served. One thing the military does is they don't forget that you've served. And that was the one big thing, because Cavalier started talking stuff. He started making things up. His name was Booda. And, he met with them again in Arizona, and he was talking about how all the police were helping him out, helping the Bundys out. And by running his mouth, he was able to say that there was a conspiracy. He was like, "Oh, like the cops are protecting here, the cops are protecting there, and are the cops off? Is the cameras off? I can tell you this secret information now." I'm like, why? The military runs on a simple principle. if you don't need to know the information, you shouldn't even ask. That's literally the truth. If you don't need to know the information, you don't have the right to ask. That was the first weakness in it. The second weakness, and this is my opinion, other people have different, some people might say that this and that and the other, was another guy that they interviewed. And this guy's name, was Burleson, Burleson. Greg Burleson. So this guy is this thin guy and he's, whatever. And, he was also at Bunkerville. Once Longbow Productions interviewed the Bundys, they got a little bit of creed on the street. And so they were able to go around to all these other people. So when Ammon Bundy knew in his gut that there was something wrong with these guys and he didn't squash them immediately, they were able to say, hey, we've been out to Bunkerville. We talked to the Bundys. You want to talk to us? And people, you can make a YouTube video and put your story out there. You can get interviewed by Readout News, was called something different at the time, but, Radio Free Readout, Charles Carroll Society. You got call one of the guys. Hey, I want to put out my story, whatever. People, people who have been here for a long time. And there's a whole bunch of Patriot media on YouTube and Patriot media on all the various, platforms for podcasts and such. It's there. So the concept is, you have the ability to do that, but then somebody comes out of nowhere and wants to interview. It's a bad thing. So anyway, this guy named Greg, they immediately say he was a neo-Nazi. Yeah, he hung out with neo-Nazis. He was whatever. I don't really trust people there, but he comes out and they're asking, they say, I'm reading from an article from The Intercept, and he says, hidden cameras recorded as the FBI agents got acquainted with their interview subject. They reviewed a map of the area around the Bundy Ranch, with Greg Burleson describing where he had been positioned during the standoff. Once the lights were on and his interview began, Burleson, bourbon in hand, which the FBI had provided him, described his bloodlust for federal agents. I literally went there to put them 6 feet under. Burleson told the crew that he had taken aim at specific people that day. I leveled off and I sighted in the people that I was targeting with the hope that the situation would turn violent. A lot of people say, thank God it wasn't bloody. Burleson added, I'm saying, damned. I was disappointed. Okay. So that's the second guy, the FBI running around as a fake blog, a fake media company called Longbow Productions, which the government said that they have every right to do, could find. And they can build their case. They can go back to the court and say, look at this guy. Now, here's an interesting thing about Greg Burleson, Burleson. Burleson. This guy, the big neo-Nazi, had been a paid FBI informant for years. We don't know why the FBI stopped paying him, but before they had this interview, the FBI stopped paying him. So he's a big neo-Nazi. He's talking out of his butt, and he was a paid FBI informant. So the first people the fake FBI Longbow Production talks to is a guy, Booda, who was not a veteran, but he claimed he was. If you can't trust that, everything else that comes out the person's mouth is probably questionable. And he meets the FBI and, he talks to him. He lets them onto the property. He doesn't vet them. And that's, there's maybe excuses for that. And then but to meet him again in a hotel room. Remember, an after action report is not pointing fingers. It's providing data so that you can improve the way that you work. And this guy then meets him in a hotel room and starts running his mouth. And hey, they turned the cameras off and of course kept all their mics on since they were all mic'd up so they could use all of this evidence. All of this evidence came out in the trial, which the Bundys just escaped by pure, people say it was a miracle that they escaped. And the second guy they do is this Greg guy. Let me see if I can find anything about his words. Hold on. Let me see if I can figure out how to get this to play so you can hear it. Hopefully you can hear that. No, you can't hear it. Yeah, maybe I'll splice that in, but that'll be a little bit of work. So, anyway, the last guy they had is Eric Parker. Eric Parker actually was pretty smart about the whole thing. Said, hey, if you're a documentary, if you're a news agency, what else have you produced? And he actually put out there, these guys haven't had any information. They seem like FBI. And so there probably there's some kind of government sting. But you know what happened? He still decided to talk to him. So I guess that's my point. My point is one of the lessons to be learned from Bunkerville is the tactics, and the methodology of what many of us consider to be a out of control and corrupt law enforcement agency who wants to extinguish a lot of people's livelihood. And one of the methodologies and tactics they use is faking media companies. And they will, of course, go and try to find the most volatile people they can and get them on tape saying the most ridiculous things they can. And then they will use that to build a case to go after the people they really need or want. The lesson here is as old as World War II, which is, a few years for us young people. And they used to have this saying, loose lips sink ships. And that's World War II, and nowadays in the hood, they have a thing that says if you're not doing the dirt, you don't need to know about it. Everyone out there, and I think a lot of people do know that they should avoid this, and I think a lot of people did. That's why they have a fairly small group of people they went after, I assume. But I think this is a learning. I'm sorry. I think this is really a learning opportunity for everyone. If you need to try to quote unquote get your word out, talk to your alternative media patriot people that you know. There are many. Find one, talk to them, use people you know. And be very cautious about talking to anyone that you don't know, especially after such a large liberty operation like Bunkerville. That almost spelled tragedy for everyone. And we have a duty to learn. Like I said, once one guy didn't do his job, Mr. Marine Booda, the Mr. Marine Scout Sniper, who, Brian Cavalier, Booda, who has no record of serving in the military. It was a kind of a cascading effect. They talked to Booda, then they talked to this other guy who had been an FBI agent. Then they they talked to a couple other people, and they had several people on camera. Then he went back, talked to the Bundys, and the Bundys were very honest. They were like, we weren't looking for violence. We weren't even carrying guns half the time. We didn't want to hurt anybody. We just wanted our cattle back. But, they were able to try to present a case where they wanted to show conspiracy and that people had come out there for the express purposes of shooting someone. No, people came out there to defend a ranching family who was being surrounded by paramilitary forces of the Bureau of Land Management, who should even have paramilitary forces. Even though it's a little bit hard to listen to for some of the people who were right there doing things, I'm sorry, Brian, Booda. I mean, if you've never served in the military, I have no respect that you ever, if you claim, oh, I never claimed that. But some of this stuff is on tape. Mr. White Supremacist Greg, whatever, sitting on tape and doing an interview where you went out there to hurt people and kill people. Really, why? By the way, that guy, allegedly he lost his sight and now he's in a wheelchair. Bloodlust for federal agents. I literally went out there to put them 6 feet under. So I think that's good work. I do. I think this is, I mean, it's learning from this would be good work. I really do believe that this is something that we can learn from. Something that we all should focus on a bit. Trust the alternative media, if you need to do this, and then do that. But be careful. The Longbow Productions methods and tactics that the FBI and the Bureau of Land Management supported nearly put several people copped to pleas before they realized how weak the government's case was. So those people are going to have to go do more jail time. Many people stayed in jail for almost 2 years just being charged with extraordinarily high bond, or actually no bond sometimes, because they were quote unquote a danger to the community, which they weren't. And so, this is, I personally think it's a lesson to be learned and to be avoided. If you know the person, talk to them. If you don't, we have to manage discipline. And since we are a conservative, independent group, that means that you should be associating with people who are disciplined. No one else is going to discipline us. You need to discipline yourselves. So thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out with the Charles Carroll Society. I hope that was useful to you. If you enjoyed the show, please share, subscribe to the blog. We've got nearly 200 regular subscribers, which is really cool. Like the podcast, share the podcast. Please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And share this podcast among all of your like-minded patriots and guys. If you want Western civilization, Christianity, and individual liberty to survive, you are personally responsible with finding some way to demonstrate your non-compliance to this post-Christian system. Every week, try to perform some small action of protest, some small action of self-reliance, and some small action of non-compliance to the neo-Marxist, postmodernist tyranny. Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey, y the Virgin of Guadalupe.
And it's a no-knock raid. It's a no-knock